3.2.3 is quite a long one and quite difficult. It's not about testing that you've got certain skills. It's about recognizing what is good practice in aligning text. So you've got to be able to use the align tools, the indent tool, and the tab, rather than putting in spaces. Let me show you the kind of things that we're talking about here. So I've got the date on the very first line. I want that on this right-hand side over here. The problem is, if I use spaces, it will look as though it's on the right-hand side. When I get to the very right, however, you just got to be a little bit careful, and you can see it jumps down to the next line, so I bring that back. Now, that's all well and good, but if I come back to this later in the year and I change it and I say, right, okay, what are we going to do in May? And I change it to May. We're no longer up against the right-hand side of our screen. And so we've got to go back and juggle around with spaces to get it where it should be. That's not good practice, waste of time, very untidy, and can lead to other problems when you're editing documents later on. So we should be using the right align tool. Here it is. And see, now it doesn't matter what I change the month to, as long as I spell it correctly, because it's got right aligned, it will always be tight against that right-hand margin. Similarly, we don't use spaces to put things in the middle of the page. Here I've got the results. I'm going to center this. Let's see where that roughly is. That feels like it's about in the right place. The problem comes if I then want to do some editing and change this sort of format, if I make that the title, all those extra spaces have now been made a lot larger and it no longer goes where it should do. So let's get rid of all the spaces and hit the center button. There it is, it's in the center, and no matter what style I go with, if I center it, it will stay there. So I can change the font down to something small. Oops, got to highlight it first. And it still stays nicely in the center. Don't have to worry about those extra spaces. So what about the other things? Things like tabs. Well, you'll notice here I've got two test scores. I've got Word up the top here and PowerPoint down here. Now the indent kind of brings things in and lets them be visually different. So my Word is almost like a little bit of a heading and my PowerPoint is something. So if I highlight this set of scores and I use the indent tool, I get an absolutely perfect line down there where they're all aligned to. Now I do the same with the second one, and not only are they all in line, they're all in line with the ones above, so we get that consistency. It looks very neat and tidy. Try and do that with spaces, and what you end up with, let's undo that and just show what I mean. If I try and put space in here, you can sometimes find that you don't quite. Now, should it be there or should it be there? One space difference, and it doesn't quite match up. If I click back on this one and show you that dotted line, you can see how Bill is just overlapping slightly more than John. So yeah, we shouldn't have spaces to line things up. And the other one was the tabs. Well, here I've got the student followed by their score. And it'd be nice if these were in columns. So my score actually ended up going down here. Looking at the toolbar, we can see where it's got this default tab at 1. What we want to do is control where those tabs go, and I want the score to be pushed across a bit more. Now to do that with the tabs, I'm going to first highlight these, and tabs are in about layout of the paragraph, so we look in the paragraph toolbar. They're quite tricky to find because they look like part of the furniture of this menu. They're down here in the bottom left. And the other thing to be wary of is that you see this 1.27 centimeters. That's the default. I'm probably not going to use it. I want here to be putting in my own particular ones. Well, 1.27 is where I am, so I'm going to add that as my first tab. And I'm going to set that as a left one. That means that the left-hand side of whatever's tabbed across there is in the line. So I'll set that. Now my next one, just move that aside, I think the score should be about, let's say, 3.5. So if I put 3.5 in here, and this time, because it's a number and we line up hundreds, tens and units, the units on the right hand side is what gets lined up. I want to set that to a right tab. And then OK. Nothing's happened. But if I now click in here after the John and 36 and press the tab key on the keyboard, you can see that's jumped out to the 3.6, sorry, the 3.5. If I do that the same, and it's not until I get to the 100 you see the effect of the right tab. You see how the units are lined up rather than the 100, the first number. And of course the one thing I've forgotten to tab across is the score. So using of tabs, indents and spacing is a much more efficient and tidy way. It's the best practice for laying out documents. If I later want to change these, suppose I put somebody in who's got a really long name and I find that 3.5 centimeters isn't long enough. Let's just do that. Let's put in then I'm going to have to move my tab across. So we highlight all those again, back to our paragraph settings, look in the tabs, look at the 3.5, clear that one, and it's placed now. Let's put it at 5 centimeters. Let's put a new one in at 5 centimeters. A right tab, set that, and OK. And you see all those jump across. I didn't press the tab key on Helen and Louise, so we add that and it goes in nicely. Much tidier than using spaces.